Heaven Blues Channel presents Paranormal, Book 20, Part 1, Tarot Cards, translated from the writings of Dr. Ahmed Khalid Tawfiq, whose books in English you will only find here. So please take a second to hit subscribe for more upcoming content. And you will notice we have jumped forward to Book 20 to bring you the first meeting of Dr. Refaat with Lucifer. Introduction. Greetings to you. Dr. Refaat Ismail, the talkative old man who never stops awaiting death, is back to give you a headache with more horror stories, the stories that he spent all his life within. Yes, that did not prevent me from falling in love at times, listening to a dreamy melody sometimes, picking a delicate flower sometimes, drawing the sun as it sets sometimes. But I admit that I have never had total happiness. And the idea of happiness itself disappearing ruined everything for me. Even the flower in my hand I would imagine withering, and even while my girlfriend was with me, I would imagine her being carried away to her grave, or to another man's house. So they say, sick? Maybe, but I don't ask for any type of psychoanalysis. It's just that I really enjoy your company, and so I will tell you a really good story tonight. So let us leave the psychoanalysis aside. You have enjoyed the horror circle, and today I present you the second horror circle, which is a bunch of short stories woven together into one bigger story. And these events took place in the year 1968, while your old man Refaat was age 44. Go ahead, take your seats, for Dr. Refaat Ismail will tell you a new horror circle story. Tarot stories. I hadn't yet left the United States. I was spending my days with my American friend Jerry, a lawyer, after the terrible psychological experiment that I had lived in the stories of Edgar Allan Poe. I had never understood if it was heavy hallucinations or a rare spiritual experience. And of course, you notice my dear young friend Harry Sheldon, the computer expert from Florida, hadn't joined me yet, but he soon caught up with me. After all, it is hard to visit America without meeting up with him, and up until this moment, I'm not really sure which of us is the jinx, me or him. For as soon as my brother Harry appears, we get harassed by zombies and pursued by the damned Shakal curse and all of Earth's demons. Harry was as funny as ever, and we spent a fair number of days together reminiscing over the memories which were common between us and rarely anyone else. I told him my stories about the killing plant, and the last priest, and the gorgeous graveyard Braska. But what intrigued him the most was my story on Edgar Allan Poe, especially when he learned the smallest details of the stories that I had lived but didn't remember reading in the first place. By revising the sum of famous American authors, he managed to see the details I had told him about them. Without a doubt, Poe had managed to lead me to his own world. Afterwards, Harry asked me to accompany him to meet the charlatan, Sam Colby, who really interested him. And so, on a sweet summer night, we took one of New York City's crazy yellow cabs to this man's house. We were received by the man with the childish, friendly features that still scare me half to death. His face lit up when he saw me, and he invited me in enthusiastically. Although we had come to him without a prior appointment, I had become an important person for whom he would open the VIP room, if he had one. I introduced him to my friend Harry, and told him that Jerry was swamped with work and couldn't come. And so we entered the bleak house, which was still as it has always been. Nothing had changed. And on a round table there were 2 tin cans of food, a plate, and a cup of steaming hot cocoa. With enthusiasm, the obnoxious man went to one corner of the room containing a pile of magazines, picked one, opened it, and ran back to show it to me. There was a photograph of my confession, written by my own hand, with a title shouting, "A Physician Admits to Cloning Principle. Colby Describes His Personal Experiment." I became angry as I read this, and said between my teeth, "But I have never admitted the cloning principle for a second. What I wrote says that I had lived an unusual experiment which I didn't understand." Here, Harry asked while looking at the magazine's cover. Magic magazine? What a dumb printing, and apparently it's so obscure. And you, Refaat, how did you allow yourself to get mixed up in such nonsense? I said, with my ears turning red, I didn't mingle in it, it was an honest testimony I gave, and I didn't say anything I hadn't known or seen myself. With enthusiasm, Sam Colby exclaimed, The article made a big splash in paranormal circles and was published twice. And the secret of its success is that the topic of the experiment this time was not a fragile nutcase, but a well-educated, mature man who would be happy to prove me as a con artist. But you are, I said, returning the magazine back to him. And I think every strange thing I had seen you had no credibility in. You almost killed me with your crazy experiment. But let's just say that you were the prompt that moved me to another unbelievable world. Colby said excitedly, taking no offense to my insult, It's the glory. You have lifted me to an unfathomable world of fame and scientific respect, and today I am invited to the Magic Club as a guest of honor, all thanks to you. Harry mumbled while sitting on a chair with both hands in his pockets. Magic Club? Weird name. And in this club, do they serve guests bat-wing soup and human skulls? And do they amuse themselves by slaughtering babies? Colby protested, saying, Don't be silly, Mr. Sheldon. This is a childish concept about magic that doesn't befit you. It fits people who read comics. Harry replied, In my opinion, comics are by far more respectable. I'm a computer programmer, Mr. Colby, and I only deal with tangible facts and theories that lead to consistent results. And if I opened my computer memory today and found a program not written by human hand, then I'm willing to believe in your so-called magic. Colby's eyes widened with a dreamy look, and I could swear that in it was a romantic sweetness that overtook his hateful fatness. Infatuated, he said, Though I respect your opinion, I don't care for it much. Today, American magicians will sit listening to me while I speak, and that's all I want in this world. Lighting a cigarette and taking a seat, I said, I thought magic and spiritualism were two separate topics. Colby started to say, Magic is, and then his face contorted in pain, and he said in a hurry, Excuse me, it's the prostate, as you know, and, as usual, he left in a hurry. Harry looked at me in surprise, as if to ask, What is wrong with this guy? I told him dismissively, Never mind him. This man's prostate becomes the topic of the hour for anyone who visits him or tries to understand even one sentence of his words. Seconds later, Colby returned from the bathroom, looking comforted. He said, while drinking the last of his cocoa, I was saying that the magic, spiritualism, and parapsychology are all names gathered under the term metaphysics, or the science of the paranormal. In this field, we are all cousins, and we meet every now and then in a big family estate called Magic Club. Each of us will give a lecture about his latest findings in the field. Then his eyes shined with a crazy look, and he exclaimed, Would you like to attend one of these meetings? I told him, while observing two fish in the fish tank who swam not caring about all this talk, Yes, but I thought these meetings are exclusive to the elite. I mean, you must be a card-carrying member or have a top hat with a rabbit inside or something like that. Shaking his head in disagreement, Colby said, What's important is leaving your tired beliefs at home, nothing more, nothing less. And I replied, I can do that. Colby glanced at the wall clock, synced it with his pocket watch, and said, Fine, the party starts in half an hour. Let's get ready to go. And a word of advice, Mr. Sheldon. I beg you to set aside your aggressive ways for a time, as where we are going there are people who don't appreciate that. Keep your argumentative, critical mentality to yourself for some time, and I promise you will know more. The meeting was in a luxurious apartment in an affluent Park Avenue neighborhood. Many servants decked in the same uniform ran here and there, carrying cups of drinks, and in the middle of the hall was a huge table with an oversized bowl filled with some drink which they ladled out to the guests, like they do in cocktail parties. And next to it, various kinds of eats which were impossible to identify. There was something resembling a slaughtered dinosaur, which I later discovered to be a huge turkey, and there were plates piled with what could be fried roaches or sauced noses or extruded eyes. I will never understand the American way of cooking. Yet now I'm supposed to take on my plate a few of these horrid-looking things to eat in pleasure in a comfortable setting. So I asked Harry to choose something for me to eat that wasn't killed by suffocation or a projectile, or containing pork, or cooked with alcohol, or cursed with a magic spell, or otherwise frightful looking. He looked at me indecisively and said, "That's a hard job. I myself am having a hard time choosing something safe." Just then his face lit up with a smile, and he said, "Wait, I found you a nice solution." He stretched his hand and moved onto my plate a couple sticks of celery. With a mouthful of celery, I started looking around the room. There was sweet music, apparently the 10th concerto of someone, coming out of nowhere like something all-encompassing, a smart trick, as you can see. The speakers must have been hidden somewhere under our feet. Even the lighting itself comes from nowhere. The wall itself is lit with a pale blue light that freshens the soul. At first I felt ashamed, as I was the only one not wearing black tie at this sophisticated party. By the way, if one of you guys could tell me what exactly the appropriate attire is here, I would appreciate knowing it for future parties. My embarrassment subsided when I saw some young men wearing jeans and suits which I could at least say were worse than mine. The character of this place was simplicity and extravagance. Simplicity in tradition, and extravagance in presentation. Up until this moment there was nothing unusual. There were young ladies wearing evening dress, walking about, acting cheerful and bubbly. There were men who apparently had reached the peak of wealth or the peak of position. Surrounding them, as they stood conceited, were men and ladies acting fully interested in what they were saying, as if a man's wealth makes him the wisest of the wise. In conclusion, it was a detestable atmosphere, and I was a human bat. I like darkness and loneliness, and I hate lights and people. And the only secret in my love for a party is that I eat there like a whale. And don't expect me to love this party in which I only scored 2 sticks of celery. But where is Harry in the midst of all this chaos? Ah, here he is, standing with a blonde wearing practically nothing. I thought these teenage ways are far removed from a married man whose gorgeous wife loves him. But I was wrong, apparently. And where is Colby in all this? Ah, here he is, the expected guest of honor for this party. He is walking here and there with his raggedy clothes, joking with this one and talking to that one, but apparently no one cares about him at all. He is just a comical, pathetic man, nothing more, nothing less. Of course, he disappeared from my vision every now and then. It's the prostate, as you know. If there was a union for amateur urinators, he would be the president of it. I guarantee him that, at least. But where is the magic in the midst of all this? It is only another fun party. True, I hadn't seen one like it except in the cinema, but I feel bored as if I spent all my life in similar parties. Therefore, I walked confidently to the open buffet, filled my plate with celery, and then went to a comfortable sofa with a small coffee table before it. I lit a cigarette and continued amusing myself by ashing on the expensive carpet and watching these fools. The hands of the clock were nearing 11 p.m. when a man in his 60s, elegant, white-haired, wearing a monocle with a gold chain, appeared. This man made his way through the crowd to find himself a suitable spot and shouted loudly in a metallic voice, "Hear ye, hear ye!" Silence prevailed, except for the piano tones coming from nowhere and everywhere. "It pleases me, as the president of the Magic Club, to present to you the guest of our party tonight." I looked from the corner of my eye to Colby, and I found him, his face constricted, as he distractedly rubbed his shoes on his pant leg in order to shine them, and then stepped forward. It was his awaited moment. But the president continued, "He is the prominent man who honors our field with this continuous generosity and sincere efforts in the sciences of the paranormal." Colby pushed himself forward through the lines of people towards the center of the circle, where the president stood, saying, "I know you are all not from our craft. Some of you are guests to us, and some of you have never heard of this excellent man." Here, Colby had reached the president and extended his hand to him, but the president continued, "I ask of all of you to greet Dr. Lucifer." The sound of clapping increased as Colby started looking around wondrously. So then, he was not the one. I felt a strong urge to laugh mixed with pity. We all know this bitter feeling. Here's Colby withdrawing, looking like he is unable to straighten his posture. Both of his shoulders fell, taking on a figure of 8, and his ears reddened increasingly while everyone who did not notice this misunderstanding chanted the famous inauguration party song, "For he's the jolly good fellow, for he's the jolly good fellow, and nobody can deny." And here I stopped looking at Colby. My eyes focused instead on a thin man wearing black. He stood next to the president, greeting people. He was tall, and everything about him was black. His hair, his clothes, his eyes. Hanging from his neck was a large gold amulet, and on his fingers were a number of diamond rings beyond my ability to count. Hanging from his right ear was an earring, and I had not seen any man wearing earrings in this era. He was astonishing, and I realized that he was using his power of suggestion fully. I realized that he had a devilish appearance that an eye can't miss. Therefore, he manifested this characteristic in the best possible way, by choosing black clothing and calling himself Lucifer, the Latin name for the devil, a name meaning the Prince of Pride, because pride leads to destruction. From the first moment I felt hatred towards him, and I wished for Harry and I to leave now. But something deep inside me compelled me to wait until this lunatic finished speaking, so as to discover the thing that gave him this prestige among his peers. All of the magicians pull a bunny from a hat, so does he pull hippos out of his? All magicians split a woman into 2. Does he split them into 3? But I was mistaken here when I mixed the magic show performed in theaters and the hidden kind done behind closed doors, for the first kind is known and always reveals magicians' trivial games. As for the second kind, I had no clue about it whatsoever. This false impostor lifted his hand to calm the noise and then said, "Happy am I for this welcoming." His voice was like his appearance, black, bleak, depressing. Although it had a mysterious, magnetic magic, it made you want to hear more. His voice was closer to the steady tones coming from the voice box of a tiger taking a nap after devouring its prey completely. "I find loyal hearts filled with love in this place," said Lucifer. Love? What is this lunatic talking about? But I noticed the tone of his voice and a decided foreign accent in his words. Clearly he is not American. Maybe he is from Eastern Europe or Russia or something like that. I also noticed that he was in his 5th decade, like myself. Lucifer continued, "Do go back to having fun. As for me, I will sit in the den of dreams with Mr. Clarton, our generous host. Now, who wants to follow me there? For with him I am well pleased, and for him my heart sings. As for others, they are happy for him." With this he turned, going towards a side room with the man I now knew as Clarton, the head of the Magicians' Union and owner of this house. It did not escape me as well the strange manner in which he spoke, to give his words a weird characteristic like that of fortune-tellers' prophecies. Colby is an example of a foolish conner. As for Lucifer, he is of the sophisticated, crafty type, the star of society's conners. And I would not be surprised if the size of his wealth was as big as his craftiness. The party returned again to its chaotic noisiness, the echoing female laughter, servants running here and there. Harry came to me from nowhere, sipping from his glass, asking, "Do you have a cigarette?" "I think so," I said, "but I thought you quit." "I did, but this blonde asked me for one." I said, "Damn you! I despise someone acting generous on my account. Take the whole pack, but return it back to me." Putting the pack in his pocket, Harry said, "What do you think of this poisonous atmosphere?" I said, "We've known worse than this, with the voodoo magicians that night. Have you forgotten?" "How could I?" he said. "Tell me, why don't you follow that lunatic to his den?" "No way." Harry responded, "But you're fascinated with new experiments. Curiosity is killing you, eh?" "Just a second, my dear, I have some cigarettes." Here Sam Colby approached me, miserable, short, disheveled, a pleading look in his eyes to forget what had happened. He told me, "As you see," and he sighed, "it's an unusual atmosphere." I replied, "I don't see something unusual, just another loud, somewhat liberated party." "That's because you haven't been in the den," said Colby. I looked in his naive eyes and found an invitation that does not need translation. He is dying to follow this Lucifer into his special meeting. And I really do not want to see that con man again. I want to go home, take a shower, and sleep. "Please," I said, "I want to eat something other than celery." Here I saw Harry coming back, carrying my pack of cigarettes, telling me with annoyance, "You and your cigs. As usual, you're using the cheapest kind of tobacco ever. The girl practically died from pneumonia after 2 drags." "I didn't ask her to light up my cigs," I said. He said, grasping both mine and Colby's arms, "Now, let's leave this nonsense. Let's go check out this Connor." I raised my hand in silent protest, but Colby was also excited, and I found myself literally pushed inside. "What do we have to lose?" Colby asked. If you had a look, the man promised us he was happy with us, and his heart sings. What if we gave him this happiness? Plus, you don't know Lucifer. He is a man who controls all the keys to magic. And he's not a conner like most of the men working in this dirty job. In other words, for your understanding, he is a man who knows what he speaks of. And just like that, I allowed myself, just this one time, to enter Dr. Lucifer's den. And as you know about me, I was naive. Naive. End of part 1. To be continued. Remember to hit subscribe to see what happens and how Lucifer plays them all.